What if I told you that Will Smith's most heartbreaking scene in The Pursuit of Happyness, where he and his son sleep in a public bathroom, actually happened in real life? But what if I also told you that some of the movie's most dramatic moments, like Chris Gardner getting hit by a car, never happened at all? The 2006 film The Pursuit of Happyness tells the incredible true story of Chris Gardner's journey from homelessness to becoming a successful stockbroker. Will Smith's powerful performance earned him an Academy Award nomination, and the movie has inspired millions worldwide. But like most Hollywood adaptations, the film took significant creative liberties with the real story. Today we're diving deep into what actually happened versus what Hollywood created for dramatic effect. Some changes will surprise you, others might shock you, and by the end, you'll have a completely new perspective on this beloved film. Let's separate fact from fiction in The Pursuit of Happyness. Before we examine the movie's accuracy, let's talk about who Chris Gardner really was. The film barely touches on Gardner's childhood, but understanding his early life is crucial to appreciating his later resilience. Born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Chris Gardner's childhood was far more traumatic than the movie suggests. He grew up in extreme poverty with an abusive stepfather who terrorized the family. His mother was periodically imprisoned for trying to protect herself and her children from domestic violence. Gardner spent time in foster care and experienced instability that would have broken many people. But here's what's remarkable. His mother, despite her own struggles, instilled in him an unshakable belief that he could achieve anything. She would tell him, "You can only depend on yourself. The cavalry ain't coming." This foundation of self-reliance would prove essential during his darkest days. After high school, Gardner enlisted in the U.S. Navy, where he became a medical specialist. This experience led to a position as a research assistant at the University of California Medical Center, where he made around $8,000 a year, equivalent to about $26,000 today. It was during this time that Gardner first considered becoming a physician, but financial pressures would soon change his trajectory entirely. Now let's dive into our first major fact check. In the movie, Chris Gardner's financial troubles stem from a disastrous investment in portable bone density scanners. The film shows him sinking his life savings into these machines, only to discover they're nearly impossible to sell. This is largely fictional. While Gardner did work in medical equipment sales, he never made the kind of all-or-nothing investment the movie portrays. The real Gardner was simply a salesman in the medical supply field, primarily dealing with one brand of equipment. He didn't gamble his entire future on bone scanners. But here's where it gets interesting. Gardner actually doubled his previous salary through medical equipment sales, showing early signs of his natural sales ability. The movie's portrayal of him as a failing salesman doesn't match reality. He was actually quite successful until he made a crucial decision that would change everything. Remember that dramatic moment where Gardner gets hit by a car while chasing someone who stole his bone scanner? Completely fictional. Gardner has never spoken about such an incident, and it doesn't appear in his autobiography. This was purely added for dramatic effect. The screenwriter Stephen Conrad created these scenarios to establish Gardner's desperation more quickly than real life would allow. In reality, Gardner's financial struggles were more complex and gradual than a single bad investment. Here's where the movie gets something absolutely right, and it's one of the most pivotal moments in Gardner's life. In the film, we see Chris approach a man getting out of a red Ferrari in San Francisco. He asks what the man does for a living, learns he's a stockbroker, and decides this is his path to success. This actually happened, almost exactly as shown in the movie. The man's name was Bob Bridges, and he really did drive a red Ferrari. But here's the detail that makes this even more incredible. Bridges was making $80,000 per month, not per year. In 1980s money, that's equivalent to over $200,000 monthly in today's currency. Bridges didn't just give Gardner career advice, he became a mentor. He organized meetings with major brokerage firms on Gardner's behalf, actively helping him land interviews for training programs. This act of kindness from a stranger would literally change the course of Gardner's life. What the movie captures perfectly is Gardner's boldness in approaching a complete stranger. Most people would never have the courage to walk up to someone and ask about their Ferrari, but Gardner's willingness to take that risk opened the door to his future. This brings us to one of the most significant changes the movie made, and it reveals how Hollywood sometimes sanitizes real stories for audience appeal. In the movie, Chris Gardner gets arrested solely because he failed to pay $1,200 in parking tickets. It's portrayed as an unfortunate consequence of his financial struggles. But here's the reality. Gardner was actually arrested following a domestic dispute with his girlfriend, Jackie Medina. During a heated argument, Gardner became physical with Jackie, and she called the police. He was initially arrested on domestic abuse charges. The unpaid parking tickets only extended his jail time. When the judge discovered the $1,200 in fines, Gardner had to serve an additional 10 days. Why did Hollywood change this? The screenwriters likely felt that showing Gardner's arrest for domestic violence would make him less sympathetic to audiences. By changing it to unpaid parking tickets, they preserved his image as purely a victim of circumstances rather than someone who had made serious mistakes. This change is significant because it shows how the real Chris Gardner was more flawed and human than his movie counterpart. His journey to redemption was not just about overcoming poverty, but also about becoming a better person. The movie presents Gardner's internship at Dean Witter Reynolds as an intense competition where only 1 out of 20 interns would be hired. This creates tremendous dramatic tension as we watch Gardner struggle to outperform his peers. This is another significant fabrication. Most people who completed Dean Witter's training program were hired. The firm's main requirement was passing the licensing exam, which Gardner did with flying colors. He scored 88%, a genuinely impressive achievement. Also, contrary to the movie's claim that interns received no pay, Dean Witter actually provided small stipends to their trainees. The writers essentially transformed a standard internship into what one critic called an unpaid battle royale between candidates. You know that inspiring moment where Gardner solves a Rubik's Cube in a taxi with a senior executive, impressing him enough to get an interview? Unfortunately, that's also fictional. Gardner's entry into the firm came through his networking skills and his relationship with his mentor Bob Bridges, not through puzzle-solving prowess. But here's what the movie got right about his internship: Gardner's incredible work ethic. He really did make marathon sessions of cold calls, refusing to hang up the phone between calls to maximize efficiency. He even avoided drinking water to avoid bathroom breaks. As Gardner himself said, it was a numbers game, and he was determined to win through sheer volume and persistence. Now we come to the most emotionally powerful aspects of the story. And surprisingly, these are where the movie is most accurate. The public bathroom scene. That devastating moment where Gardner and his son spend the night in a subway station bathroom while someone pounds on the door? This actually happened. Will Smith later said that filming in the actual bathroom where Gardner and his son had slept was one of the most emotional experiences of his career. Glide Memorial Church. The shelter scenes at Glide Memorial Church are also accurate. The real Reverend Cecil Williams even appears in the movie as himself. Williams bent the rules to allow Gardner and his son to stay, even though the shelter was typically only for women and children. Gardner really did have to race there each day to secure a spot for the night. However, there's one crucial detail the movie changes about the homelessness experience. During part of Gardner's internship, he wasn't actually with his son. Jackie had taken full custody and wouldn't tell Gardner where his son was. For several months, Gardner didn't know his child's whereabouts and spent nights at friends' houses, or even at the office. The movie simplifies this by showing Gardner and his son together throughout their ordeal, which creates a more cohesive narrative but misses the additional pain Gardner experienced of not knowing if his son was safe. Speaking of Gardner's son, the movie makes several changes to their relationship that are worth examining. Age difference. In the film, Christopher Jr. is about 5 years old during their homelessness. In reality, he was only 2 years old. Gardner himself approved this change, explaining, "My son was 2 years old when we were going through this." Did we have dialogue? Yeah. But there's obviously more you can do when the child is a little older. This change allowed for more meaningful interactions between father and son on screen. including that powerful moment where Christopher Jr. tells his father, "You're a good papa." Remarkably, this actually happened, though not in a shelter as the movie depicts. The mother's role. The movie shows Linda, Christopher Jr.'s mother, abandoning them to pursue a job opportunity on the East Coast. In reality, Jackie Medina took more responsibility for her son than the film suggests. She didn't abandon Christopher Jr. Instead, she took custody of him during part of Gardner's internship, which actually made Gardner's situation even more difficult because he was fighting both homelessness and separation from his child. One detail the movie gets absolutely right is perhaps its most memorable scene. Gardner showing up to his crucial Dean Witter interview in paint-splattered clothes. Gardner really was underdressed for this life-changing interview, though not exactly as the movie shows. In the film, he comes straight from being arrested. In reality, he had been staying at a friend's house with limited clothing options, but he did show up in inappropriate attire, and he did tell his interviewers the truth about his situation. The movie captures his honesty and even includes him making a self-deprecating joke about his pants, which really happened. What's remarkable is that his honesty and humor in that moment of vulnerability helped him get the position. Sometimes authenticity is more powerful than a perfect presentation. The movie ends with Gardner securing his position at Dean Witter, but the real story continued far beyond that moment. After passing his Series 7 exam, Gardner didn't just become another stockbroker, he excelled. Despite lacking a college education and formal connections in the finance world, his exceptional performance during the internship and his natural understanding of financial markets helped him thrive. Gardner's approach was unique. In an industry built on relationships and formal education, he succeeded through pure determination and an ability to connect with clients. His experience of having nothing gave him a perspective that resonated with people from all backgrounds. Eventually, Gardner started his own firm, Gardner Rich & Company, which he later sold for millions. But perhaps most importantly, he became a philanthropist and motivational speaker, using his story to inspire others facing similar struggles. But first, here's an incredible Easter egg you probably missed. The real Chris Gardner actually appears in the movie. In one of the final scenes, when Will Smith's character is walking down the street in his business suit after getting the job, there's a man in a suit walking in the opposite direction who nods and smiles at him. That's the real Chris Gardner making a cameo in his own life story. It's a brief but powerful moment, the real man acknowledging his fictional counterpart as they pass each other on the street. Here's something that will completely change how you view this story. Chris Gardner's son, Christopher Jr., grew up to have a successful career in his own right. But he chose to stay largely out of the public eye, living a private life away from the fame his father's story brought. And here's the part that might surprise you most. Gardner has said that his period of homelessness, while incredibly difficult, taught him lessons about resilience and priorities that no amount of money could buy. He stated that he wouldn't change his past because those experiences made him who he is today. But perhaps the most mind-blowing fact is this. Gardner continued to face significant challenges even after his success. In his autobiography, he reveals struggles with relationships and the psychological impact of his childhood trauma that continued well into his successful years. The movie's happy ending is real, but it wasn't the end of his personal growth journey. So let's do a final count of what The Pursuit of Happyness got right versus wrong. Here are the things that the movie got right. The Ferrari encounter that changed his life, his incredible work ethic during the internship, sleeping in the public bathroom, the Glide Memorial Church shelter experience, showing up underdressed to his crucial interview, his son calling him a good papa, the overall arc from homelessness to success, and here are the things the movie got wrong. The bone scanner investment story, getting hit by a car, the Rubik's Cube scene, the reason for his arrest, the competitive nature of the Dean Witter program, his son's age during their homelessness, being separated from his son during part of the internship, the mother's role in the story. What's fascinating is that in many ways, the real Chris Gardner's story is even more inspiring than the Hollywood version. The movie removes some of his flaws and struggles, but those very human imperfections make his eventual success even more meaningful. Gardner's journey wasn't just about overcoming poverty. It was about overcoming his own mistakes, childhood trauma, and the systemic barriers facing someone without education or connections. His story proves that while the cavalry might not be coming, as his mother said, sometimes one person's determination can overcome seemingly impossible odds. The Pursuit of Happyness remains a powerful film because its core message is true. With enough persistence, resilience, and a willingness to take risks, people can transform their lives. Whether Hollywood got every detail right isn't as important as the fact that Chris Gardner's real story continues to inspire people around the world to pursue their own happiness, no matter how impossible it might seem. And that, perhaps, is the most important truth of all. If you're fascinated by the hidden stories behind Hollywood's biggest hits, the shocking real events they changed, the incredible truths they couldn't put on screen, and the mind-blowing facts that make reality even more compelling than fiction, then smash that subscribe button right now, because we're just getting started uncovering the secrets behind your favorite movies.